Kiwifruit, kiwis, Chinese gooseberries, however you slice them, New Zealanders love them. The eponymous fruit is in season at the moment, and Zespri are the company in charge of exporting millions of New Zealand-grown kiwifruit across the world. On a damp, slightly cold autumn day in Te Puke, near Tauranga, grower Jeff Roderick walked us through the vines and explained what makes this part of New Zealand so good for growing kiwifruit.
I've looked all around the world at different kiwifruit areas and talked to lots of growers from different countries, and I think we've probably got optimum conditions around Te Puke. We've got good temperature range. We're still getting wind and chill, enough of it, which you need for flowers for next year, even though climate is changing slightly. We've got really good volcanic loam soils. We've got good runoff into gullies, so we're pretty frost free around this area.
What do you have to do in the process of the kiwifruit growing to make sure they're healthy and they're good quality fruit?
The first thing you need is good locations. Second thing I'd say is recognise the needs of the vines, and probably overarching all that is having good labour. So we do the basics of fertiliser, and our orchard's organic, so we're more compost and fish meal and stuff like that. But in our case, we're pretty minimalist in what we put onto our vines. You just nurture the vines all the way through, and you basically be flexible because every year nature throws you a different curveball. So
This is true kiwifruit country, with cultivated vines as far as the eye can see. Under the vines next to us is a team of pickers, about 20 of them. Each has a specially designed basket on a harness on their front, which they fill with fruit, unhooking a flap at the bottom to dump the fruit into a bin when their pack gets full. 4 bins are on a wheeled base, which low tractors drive beneath the vines to collect. So how many fruit could you pick in a day here?
Not as many as I used to. I try and avoid picking them now, but no, seriously, we expect our staff to pick 400 kilos per labour unit per hour. As a gang, we'll be picking about 80,000 kilos today. So I did the tonnage once per person per season. It's pretty scary.
What they're looking for is the perfect fruit. But what does the perfect fruit look like? So what would we look for in a good kiwi fruit, and what will happen to it when it comes off the vine?
Well, the first thing you'd look for if you're a customer, and you can't see that, is the actual data on dry matter and sugar levels. So you've got to do it by taste. So you've got to trust us as an industry that we'll time the harvesting of the crop to optimise the sensory experience. A fruit like that, I would say, I'm happy to grow a fruit like that. It's good shape, it's good colour. It'll look really good in the marketplace, sitting on the shelf. And all these fruit through here, if you look, they're pristine looking fruit. The customer is the most important part of our whole chain of events. That if we don't have customers that put that piece of fruit in their shopping trolley in the Northern Hemisphere, then we don't have an industry.
After the fruit is picked, the wooden bins are loaded onto trucks to be driven down the road to Trevelyan's pack house. It's the largest single-site pack house in New Zealand. James Trevelyan is the managing director and the son of John Trevelyan, who started the pack house in the 70s, building it from just 186 crates of kiwi fruit a year to over 11 million crates today.
If you look behind, that's the family home, and we moved here as a family, I think it was about 53 years ago. My mother and father bought this bare block of land, and yeah, Dad was passionate with trees, so he started planting.
He took us through the journey of a kiwi fruit from when it arrives at the pack house.
So when the fruit arrives, it's scanned in on site, so we know it's on site. We give it a home, and we'll rest the fruit for a couple of days to heal the picking wound at the top of the fruit. And then after a couple of days, we will then process it. We weigh the bin, and we know how much fruit is in the process, so we can balance the equation so we don't lose anything. And then we brush it to remove the excess fur on the fruit. Then we sort it to a Zespri standard, and then we put it in a tray and put a traceability sticker on the box, put it on a pallet, so that box has a relationship with all those other boxes on the pallet. We documented it, we strap it, and then we put it through our cool chain, so we are essentially slowly cooling it down to its target temperature. And then we will receive orders from Zespri, and then we match those orders with the fruit that is right for that order essentially. When we tip it out of the bin, with the gold variety there can be soft fruit that we need to take out of the population, so we spread it all out and then we look for those that are explosive or unsound. We'll put it under cameras, and those cameras then are looking for defects in the fruit, and then from there the population gets separated. If the cameras aren't happy with what it sees but unsure, it'll go to the human eye. If the camera says, I don't see anything wrong with this, it'll just go straight down the process and be packed into a tray.
Once sorted, packed and labelled, the fruit are baled up and begin the next part of their journey to the port of Tauranga. Each individual box has a label printed on it to tell you where it has come from and where in the world it's going to go. When they reach the port, the vans and crates are scanned in. Ian Mearns, the Chief Executive of Tauranga Kiwifruit Logistics, takes us to the bridge of the cargo ship and explains what happens.
So what we're doing is we're pre-receiving cargo to be loaded onto the ship, and we normally start pre-loading before the ship arrives. So when the product is arriving on the wharf, it's going through some data entry processes and some quality checks, and then getting presented to load at the ship. Okay, so we've got a cool store here which is can store around about 5,000 pallets of kiwifruit, and we use that to pre-assemble the fruit for loading during the night. It's a new store, was commissioned in 2018, and it's the latest technology for keeping fruit at the right temperature. Typically on a ship we're loading about 5,500 pallets of kiwifruit, and to load 5,500 pallets of kiwifruit we've got around about 30 people involved from a manning perspective, and the ship will take between 24 and 36 hours to load, and we're loading 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So as soon as it arrives, it's loaded and on its way. I suppose what I typically describe them as is like a car park building. It's just a whole lot of layers of loading fruit and on one deck, and then closing that deck and loading another deck and another deck and another deck. So it's just like a car park building inside.
So you can see the pallets, people scanning the pallets down there. What's happening?
Okay, so it's the next part of the scanning process on the wharf in terms of our data capture. So we're scanning the pallets onto the ship in a specific space, and that when the tally clerk is scanning the pallets, it's making sure as well that those pallets should be loaded for the ship. And then when the ship is completed, it's part of the documentation process. We're telling the arrival port that all these pallets are in this space, so they know where everything is on the ship.
4 cranes on the ship begin to hoist the kiwifruit into the hold, each crate dangling nervously as it's winched high over the side of the ship and lowered into the cavernous hold. This ship will start its journey tomorrow.
The ship will be going to Japan first to discharge in 2 ports in Japan, and then it will be going on to Korea to discharge.
The ship will take about 2 weeks to reach its first destination. A technician on board will monitor the kiwifruit closely, keeping an eye on how warm or cold they are and adding amounts of ripening gas to sections to ensure when the fruit reaches its destination, it's ready to eat. Stuart Eade, Zespri Technical Operations Manager, explains.
So when it arrives in destination, the product starts to get discharged, and then as soon as the product's been cleared through customs, we'll have checkers that are basically inspecting around 5% of the product, and they're also getting an indication of what that firmness is, and they're basically then delivering straight out the door. But this product doesn't sit around. The idea of the whole Kiwi Start program, which is the fruit that we're conditioning, is that it's to get onto the retail shelves and as quick as possible, really.
The kiwifruit from orchards in Tauranga will end up as far away as Europe. I asked Jeff Roderick where is the furthest away he has seen his kiwifruit.
I've seen them in Eastern Europe, and I've seen my fruit offloaded off wharves in Japan. Saw some in Los Angeles 9 months ago.
Do you feel proud to see it there?
Definitely feel proud. That's the whole reason of our existence, is to do that. And that's the connection thing that we should have with our customers. And yeah, of course it makes you feel proud.